so much, and sorry for just being on Zoom instead of visiting you. It's always better to meet in person, I know. But the situation is, as you know, so I think the thing that is happening now, the crisis that we have now in Poland, shows the best the meaning of the civic organizations, because what we've been observing. Hello?
Interrupt you. There is a bit of a background noise in the room.
Yes, and we have 300 meters with donations, and this is the only sitting place I can have.
No, it's not you. I think it's in the room.
Yes, because we have, of the 300 meters office, we just have one room around for everyone, so it's 6 persons sitting here.
Go on, sorry if I interrupted you.
Now, I will be speaking louder, just I will try. Ale to troszkę ciszej, dobra? So, what we've been observing for the last couple of weeks is the situation when it's the volunteer work, it's the grassroots work, it's the NGOs' work, and it's local communities, including some of the local governments, local municipalities' work. So imagine the state that does not coordinate almost 2 million refugees coming in, that doesn't coordinate any connection between people coming, people being located, people need particular services, and so on. There's no coordination, there's no help, and there's basically no money spent and no resources spent on the side of the state with the number of people coming to Poland. So for many weeks and for many days, we've observed situation at the border when Polish military, as any military, has tents, has kitchens, has all the resources that should be used in this kind of a crisis when there are so many people crossing the border, and it was never provided. There are just a couple of border crossings when there's actually any assistance. So you can imagine that everything was bought and paid and brought by regular citizens to the border, including the tents, including the information points, including everything that was funded. So, and as you can imagine, we are basically running out of resources and money and everything else. And this is the situation that is really, really hard on us because, for example, Polish Women's Strike is not a humanitarian aid organization. We are not this kind of logistics humanitarian aid organizations. We are women's rights organizations, pro-democracy organization, human rights organization. And we are one of the many organizations that does not specialize in humanitarian aid. We weren't doing that before. And this is the work that we're doing now. So you can imagine, as I said, 300 meters office that is supposed to do something totally else. Now with almost 7 tons of materials, of donations that will leave the office in just one day. And 80% of our resources, including all people who are working for us because we have a foundation, who are now just answering to the crisis, and they're just on this part of supporting people coming from, because we do 2 things. We support people coming from Ukraine and distributing donations, taking care of particular places where people are already located, and providing them with supplies, and also sending transports to the Ukraine. And you can imagine hundreds of Polish organizations, NGOs that are not humanitarian aid NGOs, that are not they are not specialized, and they were not until now, in refugee situations, that are just dropping whatever they are supposed to be doing, and they are doing the humanitarian aid. As you can imagine, we cannot go on for long, and this is really, of course, I cannot complain because the story is not about us, it's about people fleeing the war. But still, this is the civic society at the maximum, at the maximum capacity, I would also say, because, of course, I'm very proud of all of us. We are very proud of what we are doing, and we can be proud that we can organize in spite of our own state not doing anything and not spending any money to solve the crisis, basically. It's all on us. But this is not something that can go on. And going to these European issues and European things now, I am absolutely terrified with the idea of European Commission, European institutions providing Polish government with any kind of financing to resolve the crisis. Because none of that money will be spent to resolve the crisis. We have many corruption scandals during the COVID times and some other corruption scandals, including the elections financing. And the same thing will happen with any financing that will be sent directly to Polish government to resolve the crisis. Of course, the papers will be in order. There will be invoices, there will be agreements, there will be everything, but none of the money will go to the people who do the actual work, the NGOs and the local governments, local municipalities. And it's really hard on me, and it's really hard for me to listen to people at the EU institutions saying that nothing can be done, that we have to actually accept that Polish government will be presented with the money that won't be spent properly, that this is the instrument and nothing can be done. This is the matter of political will that I know really good of. And I'm really angry that there is no political will on the institution side, the EU institution side, to actually support Polish NGOs and Polish local governments, municipalities that do the work in this refugee crisis that we have now. And we prepared a letter, NGOs that are working now in this situation, appealing to the Commission to present the instrument that would include financing for the NGOs and for local governments and municipalities, because without that, we won't get any funding from the government. It's actually a blessed situation for the government that hates civic organizations, that hates local governments and municipalities. So they are very glad to see us bleeding out financially and being limited in what we can do, because in a year, they will have the blessed situation of NGOs disappearing one by one and local governments not capable of doing anything and provide people with basic services. So the same thing as Putin would want, I guess. And this is really terrible situation for us. I don't see any understanding on the EU institution side. I don't see any openness to actually see what's happening in Poland, that this is the NGOs and this is the volunteer work and this is the people who are, and the local municipalities and local governments doing the work. So yeah, that's exhausting. Because this is something that we should get out of the question directly and now. Instead of that, we are put in a position that we are asking and we are being told no, that the money will go to the government in spite of the fact that it will be stolen. The law was just established and is now in the parliament that actually any crimes committed against the public finances during the Ukrainian crisis will not be punished. So even that, we even have the law that is prepared for the corruption and fraud situation that is hanging above us, and we can expect it from the government. So this is really hard, and I don't know what we can do, because this is one of the very few times that I cannot say that I know that we will manage, and this is really hard for me because I'm personally on, I think, 80-something plus trials for protesting, and our situation is the enemy of the government, and there is a whole smear campaign against us on national television, and so on. And yet, it will be this situation of European Union institutions supporting our government instead of supporting people who are doing the work to solve the crisis that might bring my organization down. And I would never expect that this is what will actually be so dangerous for us that we might be forced to close our activities. So this is the situation. This is the situation here. And I don't know if you have any questions, because I guess that would be easier to answer. The thing that we expect from international community, we will release the letter to European Commission, to the Commission and European commissioners on the situation in Poland and who should get the support from the EU. I have a feeling, and I have a strong feeling, that it will be ignored, in spite of the fact that there are possibilities to fund and help and support organizations that are doing the work. But we need the international community to at least try with us to not just stand when we will be fighting for the money that we won't possibly get, so we will have to spend our own budget. It's a matter of Polish society not also being able to crowdfund. We were crowdfunding millions and millions and millions that were spent already by volunteers, by grassroots groups, and so on. And Polish society will be out of money soon. So there will be no collections, no donations, nothing that we can base on. This is also the situation that is coming. So, yeah, I know it's not very optimistic. I'm also furious when I've heard that Western countries and the European Union decided that Ukraine is not worth the speed track for joining the Union. I think it's appalling when the ultimate fight for European values, the base values that EU was built on, is actually now on the streets of Kiev and Kharkiv and Ivano-Frankivsk and Mariupol and Melitopol and so on. This is a shame and this is a disgrace to even say something like that, because the fight for European values is out there and here in Poland and in the East. And this is again the time when I feel like 50% European citizen, 50% voice, 50% reach, 50% worth, because I'm from the East, along with my sisters and brothers from the Ukraine.
Thank you, Marta. First of all, exactly. Thank you for this. I have just an additional question, which is one of the reasons why the title of the Congress is for Open Congress for Sustainable Peace, Freedom and Democracy. So on one side, feel free to share with us the letter of the Polish NGOs and whatever we can do to circulate it in other European networks. We will do our best to be at service of the need that you have identified. But my question is also how the emergency of the war, which of course is the highest priority, might impact the other issues that are on the usual table of the Polish civil society, and you represent the fight for abortion rights and sexual and reproductive health. So what does it mean having a situation of emergency that can shadow the other ongoing issues related to civil rights? Your perspective on this is important.
It means a huge backlash. It means the field for the anti-human rights, anti-European organizations, because obviously they're not the ones doing the humanitarian help. The so-called pro-life organizations are not doing anything to help in the crisis. It's us who do that. So we can imagine that most of the organizations specializing in actions pro-human rights, pro-women's rights, pro-democracy, pro-rule of law, are now, as we are, overwhelmed with what we have to do to deal with the crisis, with the humanitarian crisis. It means it means very possible situation of even bigger backlash of the right-wing organizations, more influence on their side, also to the law established in Poland. And it also means a situation that we cannot that most of the organizations won't be able to provide services to people. So we can imagine domestic violence organizations who help domestic violence survivors that won't be capable of not only providing to the new people that came to Poland, but actually giving service to those already here in Poland. And it means all the fields, because the organizations that are doing now the humanitarian work are the organizations also that should be doing at the same time something else. So we can see that all organizations that are there to fight all kinds of social exclusion will be limited in their actions and won't have the capacity to help the new citizens, the Ukrainian citizens that come to Poland. So it's a crash of the system, I would say. Of course, the choice will be this horrible choice. Are we still doing the humanitarian aid, or are we going back to our regular work? And there's no good answer, and there's no good choice. So this is the problem now. We see that there are many with the whole chaos and no coordination. We see very serious things happening. There was already one case of rape when someone was, when a woman was at someone's home, because we are accepting people in our homes, and she was raped. There was a case of rape, and then the man was arrested, and so on and so on. But this is just one case that has been reported. But we have over 1 million citizens in homes. There's no registration. There's no way to track those persons. Nobody knows what's happening to those people. So we can imagine everything from human trafficking, all kinds of abuse. We can expect all kinds of abuse in the work sector, in the healthcare sector, in the educational sector, everywhere. Basically, because people coming from Ukraine have no protection against things that happen in all societies. They happen everywhere. And with NGOs that deal with that now overwhelmed with the basic humanitarian aid, people coming to Poland are absolutely helpless. They are not protected against any kind of abuse. And this is scary. And that's why we should get help also, as NGOs is not the humanitarian aid NGOs, but NGOs that do other kinds of work to go back to what we should be doing. So we should be still the organization that fights for reproductive rights, for women's rights, for human rights, intervenes, provides services against domestic violence, and so on and so on. And we are very limited in that. So we are looking at the really regressive time now on all issues that civic society organizations are doing in Poland.
Marta, we know that you are super busy and you have to run. So while you run, please share with us any relevant links and information also through our shared contacts on how other European organizations such as our movement, Eumans, and movements that people that are here belong to can help to create a shared request to the European Union. And
I can answer it now. We need, in spite of everything, we need joint projects with patient partners that will support us with doing the work here, but also will provide us with some input on the regular fields of our work, so domestic violence and reproductive rights and LGBT rights and human rights, rule of law especially, and judicial independence. We need donations, of course, we need money, and we need donations like transports with donations that we can distribute in Poland. So we need collections of particular supplies that we can distribute here in Poland. And we need the EU member states and EU politicians, but also EU organizations to pressure for the rule of law sanctions against Poland, because what we're looking at now is Polish government pushing European institutions to actually stop executing the budget conditionality and the whole rule of law procedures, which means that also personally for me, but also for the judges in Poland, those brave who rebel against the attacks on judicial independence, that we will lose judicial independence and we also will cease to exist. On the same day when Russia left the Council of Europe, Polish so-called Constitutional Court decided that we are not binded by the Basic Rights Convention. And we don't fall under the European Court of Human Rights judiciary powers. So it's a horrible situation for us. And I'm always saying that I was saying that for a long time. We can handle the regular work that we're doing. We don't have to be put in the corner to cry over lost abortion rights. What we need is rule of law and judicial independence. We will handle the rest. So we need the support against Polish government in the European institutions to fight for the rule of law and judicial independence in Poland, because without that, we're done. We wouldn't have the ban on abortion if the so-called Constitutional Court was not hijacked by politicians, and so on, so on. We can see, we can look at Constitutional Court of Poland dropping all the international conventions, all the international human rights conventions, anything that binds the state against doing harm to its citizens. So this is the thing, the rule of law and judicial independence situation, and help with being supported in solving the humanitarian crisis. We will handle the rest. When we can go back to our regular work, we will manage. We know what we are doing. We can cover, but we need help on those two issues, the crisis and the rule of law and judicial independence.
Marta Lempart, founder of the All Women Strike movement.